You might have hundreds of kills on a tough boss, then you try a new one and suddenly it feels like you're back at square one. Your stats are higher, your gear's better, but somehow it feels like you've never played RuneScape before. That's not because you're bad. Learning bosses doesn't necessarily teach you PvM, it teaches you that boss. Think about it like trying to learn the guitar by just memorizing songs. You can play Wonderwall, you can play Smoke on the Water, but when you look at the guitar itself, you don't know how to apply that knowledge anywhere else. Sometimes just getting the kill on a boss is enough, but if you actually want to level up your game, you need to understand the why behind it all. When you learn a boss, what you're really doing is memorizing where to stand, when to eat, which prayer to click, and what kills you if you mess up. That absolutely works for that boss. When you try something new and the mechanics change, all of that knowledge goes up in smoke. New boss, new guide, new 20-minute video, and the cycle repeats itself. Learning PvM isn't just remembering a collection of separate bosses, it's one system repeating itself in different patterns. Before we talk about prayers, weapons, food, or switches, you need to see the two key things that glue it all together. Everything runs on ticks and a grid. Once you see that, the entire game makes sense. Let's quickly explain what ticks are and how a basic understanding of them can help fix so many issues. RuneScape doesn't register input instantly. You can click whenever you want, but the game only actually registers your input on a 0.6 second interval. This interval is called a game tick. If you're totally unfamiliar with ticks, the metronome plugin on RuneLite is a great way to get familiar with it. Turn it on whenever it beeps, that's a tick. That's why some clicks feel instant and others feel delayed. You're not lagging, you just clicked halfway through a tick and had to wait for the next one. Once you understand that, a lot of PvM frustration suddenly makes sense. Every action you take gets queued and starts on the next tick. That includes attacking, eating, switching, prayers, moving, all of it. Some actions can be done at the same time as others. You can move and put a prayer on at the same time, for example, but for most stuff in combat, you can't squeeze extra actions in by clicking faster. The game just ignores anything that doesn't line up. Throughout this video, I'll give you some key pieces of advice. If you take anything away from the video, it's these little nuggets. Here's the first one. No matter what you're trying to do, click once with purpose. Spam clicking will get you nowhere. The concept of the grid is a lot more intuitive. If you're extremely perceptive, you might have noticed that RuneScape is a tile-based game. Movement isn't free, you're standing on squares. Utilizing this knowledge in combination with the tick system allows you to boil down pretty much every boss in RuneScape to being on the right square at the right tick. The grid isn't quite as simple as it seems though. Your player isn't necessarily always where you think they are. We'll go into this in more depth later. We'll go through how all of this applies in context, but before we do, why haven't you liked and subscribed? If this content helps you out, I'm always releasing new stuff. Liking and subscribing is the best way to make sure I stay in your algorithm and help my content reach other people just like you. If you want to help me out even more, you can pick up some sweet RuneScape merch from Creator Crafted using my 10% discount code, 10boot. The link's in the description. Let me show you how the tick system applies everywhere. Weapon speed is the most obvious example. Every weapon attacks on a fixed cycle. A whip swings every 4 ticks. A blowpipe shoots every 3. God swords and most other big two-handed weapons are super slow. This is why some weapons will deal less damage over time, even though they've got a much higher max hit. Big shout out to all of the Giga Chads main-handing a Bando's God sword at pest control back in the day. This delay occurs even when switching between enemies. If you've got a 4-tick weapon, you'll have to wait until the end of those 4 ticks before you can attack your new target. If you switch weapons, you have to wait for the delay of the weapon you had on before the switch to finish. Let's see how this tick system applies to prayers. Using protection prayers is such a powerful tool. Mastering your prayer management is arguably the most essential tool in the entire game. When you turn on a prayer, the effects apply on the next tick. This is essentially instantly. When you're trying to protect against incoming damage at a boss, you just need to have the right protection prayer on at the same tick as when the boss's damage is calculated. Once you get into the swing of things at a boss, you can really start to pick up on that rhythm and pray at the right time. Some bosses change attack style randomly, sure, but you can still get into the groove. You just need to take that split second to think about which prayers to press, not so much when to press it. Knowing when to pray for each boss is still important. Different bosses calculate their damage roll at different times. For some bosses, this will be when the attack animation starts. Most super old bosses and normal monsters work this way. If you were prayer flicking to save points on a Slayer task, you want your prayer on when the monster starts attacking. For other monsters, the animation gives you a chance to recognize and react. Think the iconic mage range switch at Tuztok Jad. The stomp is ranged, the fireball is mage. For most more modern bosses, the damage rolls when the hit splat shows up, meaning you can often react to a projectile mid-air and get the right prayer up. There's loads of other cool stuff you can do with prayers in the tick system, lazy flicking, one tick flicking. Let me know in the comments if you want a specific guide on any of these techniques. Here's the second piece of advice: have the right prayer up at the right time. There's no intuitive way to know this, it's a massive inconsistency in the game, and honestly, it's a bit of a pain point. This is one of those times that watching a guide is always useful for, unless you've got the money in the bank to learn through trial and error. All of this tick stuff also applies to eating food. Most food pauses your attacks and pushes your next action back. This is why eating can sometimes feel really clunky and slow down the fight, and also why combo food is so strong, it fits more healing into fewer ticks. If you're not familiar with combo food, you can eat some foods on the same tick as others and drink potions that heal you. When you know what you're doing, this allows you to get 3 heals off in one go. The biggest heal in one tick includes a Marlin, a Halibut, and a dose of Saradomin brew. You can heal 60 damage at once with this combo, all in one tick. It would take 9 ticks to heal this much if you were purely eating Marlin, the highest healing normal food. Good eating in a PvM situation is about eating during dead time when you weren't attacking anyway. A great example is the freezing eye attack at Duke. It's also a fair argument that you can't damage the boss if you're dead, so until you get good, inefficient eating is better than not eating at all. Movement is tick based too. Running moves you 2 tiles per tick, walking moves you 1. That actually matters a lot more than most people getting into PvM for the first time realise. Moving 2 tiles in a tick can let you pass over mechanics that only check your position once per tick. Floor damage, lightning, poison tiles. Sototek's Maze is a perfect example. Knowing how movement works lets you skip half the dangerous tiles. You can even use this to skip over moving obstacles. Think about the glowing floor at Wardens or the wave attacks at Huecoatl and Yama. This can also be a problem though. As well as helping you avoid stuff you don't want to stand on, it can make you step over things that you do want to stand on. Movement happens on the tick after you click. Click too late and the damage check's already rolled. The real skill in PvM is pre-moving, moving on a safe tick before the attack lands. Short, deliberate ticks give you control. Long clicks hand control to the game's pathing system, which will walk you straight into danger. Corners, obstacles, weird diagonals. This game happily walks you into the firing line if it thinks that's the shortest path. Breaking big distances into small steps tells the game exactly where you want to move and how. Most movements should be proactive, not reactive. Think about it like dodging bullets. Would you rather dodge them as they're firing at you or already be around the corner before they start firing? When you think about Old School RuneScape as a grid, it's important to consider that you actually move ahead of where your character appears. This is super hard to explain, but the visual on screen hopefully does it justice. See that red tile? I'm using the Tile Indicators plugin to show my true tile. My player avatar is about 2 tiles behind where the game is telling me I actually am. Here's that simple rule: don't stand in the shit on the floor. You've probably heard this one before if you've watched my videos. Falling debris, poison, lava, lightning, most hazards are obvious once you're watching for them, but understanding how the movement works via ticks and the grid really helps you to deal with things appropriately. You're probably not going to be surprised by this, but the tick system also applies to gear switching. It really is relevant to everything in the entire game. If you can click all of your gear switches on the same tick, you'll lose no DPS. Damage loss happens when your switches spill over into the next tick and delay your next attack. The most important switch to get is always your weapon. If you need to change combat styles and you're not comfortable with big switches, switch the weapon and get back on the boss. You'll get some damage out. The rest of the armor or offensive prayers is extra accuracy and damage. It's definitely good to get it back on, but you can add it back in once you're back in cycle with the boss. The worst thing that can happen is you get distracted by the absolute mess of gear in your inventory and get absolutely slapped by the boss. When you're learning, keep switches small. A 4-way switch is the standard to work up to. Add on 1 or 2 extra armor pieces if that feels comfortable. Trying to force massive 8-way switches too early will just lead to panic clicking and missed hits. Clean switches beat big switches. A really practical tip that helps immediately is to line your switches up. For a 4-way switch, my advice is to consistently arrange your gear in the same way across your inventory. Anything that lets you move your mouse smoothly in a pattern with as little movement as possible instead of jumping around all over the place. You can do Z-shape or N-shape switches across one square for a 4-way switch. You can extend these out across a column or a row in your inventory too. Straight down and straight across work too if that feels more natural to you. The goal is simple. Fewer mouse movements, fewer mistakes, cleaner switches, all as fast as possible, ideally within 1 tick. Here's that 4th piece of advice. Some damage is better than no damage. Getting on the boss quicker is more important than having everything perfect before you start attacking again. One thing we haven't really talked about is NPC movement. When you're watching the sweats take on content like the Inferno or Colosseum, you've probably heard about the southwest tile. This is where that grid system really comes into play. We've already covered that the entire floor is a grid, but so are enemies that are bigger than 1 tile. They calculate their movement from the most southwest tile on that grid. That's why NPCs get stuck on obstacles when they go around them one way, but not the other. There are definitely exceptions. The Fremeniks in the Colosseum will absolutely bum rush you around any obstacle, but there are very few of these in the game. I'm using the Better NPC Highlighter plugin to highlight the monsters in the Colosseum here. It's mostly an endgame level strategy that you'll learn about when you decide to tackle this content yourself. I'm still not a master of it. But if you've done the fight caves and used any of the recommended safe spots, you've put this into practice already without realizing it. Another great example to my music analogy, you've learnt the song, but you've got no idea why any of it works or how to use it in context elsewhere. RuneScape is a massive game with so many different ways to play it. There are so many bosses to learn, and learning the processes and mechanics that underpin them all is the best way to broaden your knowledge and prepare you to take in as much information as possible as quickly as possible when it comes to learning the fight. If learning the boss is playing your favourite songs, learning all of this stuff is really mastering the instrument. Just ask Mod Ash. Have I mastered all of this yet? Absolutely not. I'm still just getting into the real late game content myself. I'm not an expert, I'm just helping share that little knowledge that I do have that's helped me progress my account, and hopefully it helps you progress yours too. So let's bring it all together and recap those 4 pieces of key advice. Click once with purpose, use the right prayer at the right time, don't stand in the shit on the floor, and some damage is better than no damage. I'm absolutely oversimplifying everything here, so don't be disheartened if you're still dying to bosses. Failing is part of the process. I hate cliches, but you only really fail when you decide not to try again. As always, I'd love to give a massive shout out to my channel members and Twitch subscribers. You guys are absolute legends. I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you next time.